Hey everyone, Randy here, and welcome to The Dark Project, which is all about rekindling my passion for writing and sharing some tips and tricks and opinions with you all along the way. This video is going to be a much loved topic for me, and that is terrible writing advice. A lot of these things are said with good intentions, but as we know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So I'm going to share with you 3 absolutely awful bits of writing advice I have found shared frequently across the internet universe. Terrible writing advice tip number 1. If you don't write daily, you are not a true writer. I think we all know that this is a crock at this point. Honestly, seriously. My opinion, there are a few different types of writers. The first of those types is a turtle or tortoise writing type. They are the slow and steady type. Some of these people write maybe 500 to 1,000 words a day, maybe every other day. They just keep chugging along, going at their pace, moving through things, and everything's fine, and they just keep going, and it's great. And then there are other people who are writers more like me, who have great aspirations to have the dedication and life circumstance to be able to write every day. And we are more hare types, which is that we can write a lot in a very short amount of time. Not necessarily writing sprints, but maybe, I haven't written for a few weeks, and then you have an entire day and you sit down and bang out a lot of words. My personal max for one day was during NaNoWriMo quite some time ago. 18,000 words in one day. I average somewhere between 1,500 and 2,500 words an hour, but at max, highly caffeinated with nothing else on my mind and nothing to worry about, I can write like 3,000 words in an hour. But I don't always have an hour every day. So if I have a full day where I have jack all nothing to do and I can just sit and write, guess what? I'm going to do that. That doesn't make me any less of a writer than somebody who sits down with their butt in chair at 5 a.m. every single day routine, and they write like 1,000 words, 2,000 words. Both are valid. You are still a writer, regardless of which type you are, or if there's some other type in between that's a combination that fits you. You are still a writer. Terrible advice. Terrible writing advice tip number 2. Never edit as you write. I personally hate this one because I write very clean copy for my first drafts. Very clean. But I also don't agonize over edits as I go. It just kind of naturally occurs. I'm not going to write out a sentence that I see has 2 typos in it and just leave those 2 typos there and move on, because farther down the line, that's going to mean that I'm going to have to spend more time going back through and fixing it instead of just fixing it right now as I see it. The more you write over time, the cleaner your first draft is going to be. That's really all there is to it. I know that some people don't write in enough quantity to ever have a really clean first draft, and that's why they require the help of an editor. I don't use editors. I never have, and I honestly probably never will, because I have been writing seriously for over 20 years at this point. I read a lot, I write a lot, I go through and fix things as I see them, and then I go back through and I do paper copy edits. That is my biggest thing, but we'll get into that with tip 3. If you're having an issue with getting hung up on editing while you're writing, then you might want to scale it back a little bit, because you do want to avoid the analysis paralysis as you go. But there is a happy medium of editing little things that you see as you're going along while you're writing your first draft and just completely leaving it the rawest of the raw, as Gordon Ramsay would say. It's so raw, it's mooing. Don't make your first draft still mooing. I know not everybody likes things well done. I like things to be completely cooked, including my first draft. Completely cooked. So let me cook. Terrible writing advice. Terrible writing advice tip number 3, not 2, but 3. This many fingers. Why do my fingers look off kilter? That is terrible. Anyway, never self-edit. Bad. This one is just so categorically false that every time I see people say that and say, oh, if you can't afford an editor or if you don't have an editor, then your work is going to look amateur and sloppy. Let me tell you what, there are so many authors who are traditionally published authors who've been in the biz for well over 30 years at this point, one of whom I absolutely adore and love to death up until recently because some of her more recent work is kind of meh, is Laurel K. Hamilton. You can love her or hate her, that's not really the issue here. The issue is that even with her works being professionally edited, traditionally published, you would think they go over everything with a fine-tooth comb. There's going to be 0 errors. Guess what? Wrong. I have noticed, and yes, I have actually gone through with a highlighter, so I have some empirical data that I have accrued over a long career of reading many books and having a very nitpicky eye. The average traditionally published book will contain 5 to 10 typos. That's all there is to it. If you can edit your work so you're on par with that, the hell with everybody who says that you need to pay an editor. And this isn't to slag off editors. Editors are wonderful people. They do a wonderful service and a glorious job and make some work that honestly without them would be completely unpalatable into marvelously polished works. But if you are like me and you are extremely analytical and you can look at your work and say, oh hey, this needs to be restructured, you might not need one. It will take practice. It will take time. I'm not saying if this is the first thing you've written, you don't need anybody else to look over it. You can just do it yourself. If you've been writing for a really long time, maybe, but you should probably have a second set of eyeballs, at least read through it. Maybe not specifically looking for line edits, but you never know. Maybe you'll be lucky and have a friend who would be an excellent beta reader and can catch those things for you, or alpha reader even. For me, it boils down to the idea that if you don't pay someone else to edit your work, you're a hack, and objectively it has to be shit, is wrong. It's just completely and utterly wrong. Do you want to write? Do you write? Have you taken enough English classes to have a basic grasp of the language? Or whatever language you are writing your book in. This is mostly applying to other English speakers like myself. Do you listen to people speak? Or engage in conversation with other human beings? Then you have all of the tools to, with time and practice, edit your own work. With time and practice, you'll be fine. Semi-pro tip, print your manuscript and do physical edits. You will catch way more mistakes and it will make the revision process so much easier. Let me actually grab the manuscript I'm currently working on that I have done paper edits up through chapter 24 so I can show you what it looks like. We are going to ignore the fact that I am a long chapter kind of girl. This is the first chapter of Blood from Stone, which I talked about in my writing update vlog that went up whenever ago, depending on when I post this. So, this is what it looks like. See how it's in neon pink? See how with the revisions I went through and realized that this whole paragraph was absolute garbage, and went through and reworded the whole thing as like a single sentence. I go through and like have all my little proofreader marks here, all the things. Paper edits, because staring at a screen all the time, you're gonna miss stuff. You really are. If you don't have a printer at home, it is worth spending a couple of bucks to get it printed off at a print shop so that you can scribble all over it. Your work will be so much better for it. Yeah, perfect example. More proofreader marks here. Right through here. Yeah. But just to give you an idea of how much I change going through with revisions. And there are some parts where there isn't very much because it was actually done quite well. I was probably much more awake when I was writing that parts. I tend to be a late evening, like 1 o'clock in the morning writer. So yeah. Sometimes you write stuff and you look at it and you're like, what was I talking about? None of this makes any sense. I'm sure to my sleep-deprived brain at the time, it made plenty of sense, but it sure as hell don't make sense now. So yeah. Paper edits are your friend when you are self-editing. And honestly, even if you're planning to have an editor or a proofreader that you pay for, you should still go through and do that anyway. It will make it easier for them. And if there's somebody who charges hourly, not just by the word, the less time they have to spend on it, the more money you're going to save that can then go back into your book for covers, whatever, swag, merch, whatever other stuff you're doing. So it's worth it. Is it a skill? Yes, it's a skill. And it takes time to hone that skill. But it is a skill worth having, especially if you plan on writing to publish. And I only have one thing published right now. I have published before. So if anybody wants to come for me and say, oh, you're just indie published, what do you know? I have 2 words for you, and they're fuck off. And I hope that anybody who has been discouraged by all of the talk of how all indie authors are garbage and everything is low quality, be encouraged by this. You can do a lot of this on your own. Is it going to be more difficult? Is it going to take more time? Yes and no. From everything I've heard, there's a lot of discourse lately about how trad pub houses don't do all of the things that we're led to believe that they do. So keep your eyes out. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and let me know what you thought about this terrible writing advice and whether you've been given any of this advice at any point, and I will catch you all in the next video. Until then, take care of yourselves and keep writing.